Műsorunkat a Hitspace, az Audio Partner, a Universal Audio, az Arturia, a Sennheiser, a Neumann és az ATC támogatja. Könyveinket és kurzusainkat az mpvmedia.hu oldalon tudjátok megrendelni. Sziasztok! Sok szeretettel üdvözöllek titeket az MPV legújabb adásában. Ahogy megszoktuk, ebben a novemberi hónapban jövök a Sennheiseres Neumannos előadás felvételekkel, amiket volt olyan szerencsém az Audio Partner által rendezett rendezvényeken rögzíteni, és erre engedélyt is kaptam, hogy ezeket publikáljuk. A mostani adás Dolby ATMOS fókuszú lesz, ami szintén a Pannóniában zajlott le. 2 darab workshopot vágtam így össze. Az egyik workshop egyenesen a Dolby-tól fog elhangozni, tehát a Dolby-tól jött ki egy ember, most nem emlékszem így hirtelen a nevére, nagyon rossz vagyok így a nevekben, tehát a Dolby-tól lesz egy előadónk, angol nyelven beszél az egész formátumról, a történetéről, illetve így nagyon-nagyon az alapokról, és utána a videó második etapjában meg Attissal az X Supersize-ból, tehát az S Studio-ból találkozhattok, Subscribe, ismeritek a dalfutárból is, és már voltam nála stúdió látogatásként, pontosan 1 éve. Szóval Attis tart egy ilyen mini Q&A-t, egy ilyen mini bemutató jellegű videót, hogy ő hogyan dolgozik ATMOS-ban, mutat 1-2 projektet, amit nem tudom, hogy be tudunk-e vágni, mert hogy levágja a YouTube vagy sem, szóval lényegében mutat egy pár tippet, trükköt, hogy ő hogyan dolgozik ATMOS-ban. Szintén 2 ilyen előadásra ültem be, úgyhogy valamikor kezemben volt a kézikamera, valamikor le tudtam tenni, úgyhogy itt lehetnek képileg nem megfelelő dolgok, de úgy gondolom, hogy az információ az teljesen megéri, úgyhogy ha valakit érdekel a Dolby ATMOS, ennek az egésznek a jövője, esetleg már gondolkozik abba, hogy otthon ATMOS mixeket akar csinálni, vagy bővíteni a repertoárját, vagy elkezdeni gondolkozni, hogy ebbe az immerzív dologba hogyan tud belelépni, akkor szerintem ez egy jó adás lesz, és szerintem nagyon jó volt az ATMOS-os angol előadás, és jó volt Attisnak az előadása is, úgyhogy sok jó szórakozást és tanulást és örömöt kívánok ennek a videónak a megnézésére. Illetve, ahogy mondottam már, folynak folyamatosan a jegyek a 7. egyben, hát nem azt mondom, hogy utolsó, de egy jó darabig utolsó ekkora volumenű MPV találkozóra. Velünk lesz Kovács Ákos, Lugosi Dani, Vigarni, Sebestyén Galaszenikő és még sokan mások. Lesz egy külön demo feedback termőnk, Tamásunknak megjelenik a második, szerintem egyben egyik legjobb könyve is, mármint témaügyileg szerintem ezt nagyon-nagyon sokan várjátok, és ilyen formában így úgy gondoltam, a 7-es az egy kerek szám, itt kell egy picit a csúcson szüneteltetni legalábbis, és amíg így egy újabb lendületet kap az egész, és én is kitaláltam ezt az egészet, hogyan lehet így jobban megreformálni, és még nagyobbra növeszteni, mert szerintem így elértünk nagyjából egy valamilyen szintű plafon, akkor utána újra visszatérek, addig meg ilyen sok-sok kicsi, apró mini találkozóval, meg ilyen mini workshoppal, rendezvénnyel fogunk találkozni a jövőben, úgyhogy jegyek a leírásban, mármint ezeknek a linkje, és akkor jó szórakozást kívánok az adáshoz is. Angolul nem tudtam most feliratozni, szerintem nem annyira nehéz, és lesz benne egy meglepetés vendég is, akit az előadáson külön Zoomon keresztül hívtak be, úgyhogy az is tök izgi.
Hello! Hello everybody! I'm David from working for Dolby. I'm here from Germany, and I'm looking after sound studios, mixing engineers, basically the whole relation to the people that use our technology for creating content, let's put it this way. Movies, music, all kinds of things. So my idea on this presentation is to give you a little bit of an overview what Dolby Atmos is about, because I think there are still a lot of questions around Dolby Atmos. I'm pretty sure everybody here has heard about it and everybody knows a little bit about it, but there are still a lot of questions. So I actually grouped this presentation into a few sections to answer the most important questions. And we will actually have a guest dialing in about half an hour, who is running a Dolby Atmos studio in Sweden and is quite successful mixing over there. So we thought it's nice to have somebody talking who is not from the company. Yeah, but first let's dive into probably the most important questions that you might have around Dolby Atmos. So the first question is, of course, always, what is Dolby Atmos? So the basic idea in the beginning was we wanted to create something that has a better sound experience, something that goes beyond what you have in stereo for the last 50 years that has become a little bit boring, and of course surround sound. So I think we all work in the audio industry because we want to do something better. We want the sound to be better, the experience for our audience, for our customers to be better. It can be a movie and you want to really have the audience feel like they're in the movie. It can be music, can be all kinds of things. In the end, it's all of this. The whole Dolby Atmos thing is not about technology and codecs, it's about an experience, right? So that's the beginning of everything. So I think pretty much everybody in this room should agree that immersive sound has a very special quality to it. It's a nice way to experience music or movies when you have that feeling of being in the middle of the sound field, having sound coming from all directions. This has always been a thing that people wanted to do. The problem was that it's very hard to do it in a mass market compatible way. So people don't like putting up many speakers. It's complicated to transfer sound. The more channels you get, the more possible down mixes and all of kinds of things you get. So it becomes quite complicated. And I think the special thing about Dolby Atmos is that I think we kind of found a way to transmit and reproduce immersive audio in a way that actually works for end customers in a mass market compatible way, which is, I think, why it's interesting for all of you. So the first thing we did when we designed Dolby Atmos was to get rid of absolute numbers of channels. So we use a concept that is called object-based audio. This is not something that we invented. It's just another way to produce and transmit audio, but we thought, okay, this is the best way to do it if you want to transmit more than, let's say, 5.1. The idea of object-based audio is you take your sounds, can be any sound, like can be this bird in your nature ambience, or it can be the guitar or the singer of your music. It really doesn't matter what content we're talking about. You always have audio elements, and the idea is to give that elements a position in space. So you place them on an X, Y, and Z coordinate, and with like 3 little numbers, you can put it on any position in the room. And the cool thing about this is that this will work independently of the number of loudspeakers. So once you have defined a position in space, let's say you want your sound to be here, and then you can be in a big cinema with 50 speakers, or in a smaller home cinema, or in a studio, or in all kinds of settings. And X, Y, and Z is always the same coordinate relative to the listener in a big room, in a small room with many speakers, with fewer speakers. So this way we can be a lot more relaxed when it comes to the number of loudspeakers, both in the mixing room and in the reproduction at the end customer. And basically taking a sound and giving it these X, Y, and Z positions enables a lot of things. And this X, Y, and Z is metadata. So we store audio plus metadata in a container. And this X, Y, and Z positions in space are metadata. We use some additional metadata because we said, hey, if we have a container that can transmit audio plus metadata, that's great. Let's use this for more than just X, Y, and Z. So we have additional metadata to help with the reproduction on headphones, to help with the down mixes when somebody does not have an immersive system. When you want to hear a Dolby Atmos mix in 5.1 or stereo, we have additional metadata to define the trims, how to get from one to the other. So, but the basic idea is you have audio plus metadata, and this way we are able to adapt to a lot of different playback scenarios, as I like to call it. A lot of different ways that people can actually experience Dolby Atmos. So that brings you to the next question, okay? Everybody says, okay, right, immersive audio is cool, but how can you actually hear it? So that is really the interesting thing about Dolby Atmos. So it started in the cinema, and it's still strong. So in the cinema, this object-based approach has, of course, a very obvious use case, because you're sitting in a cinema, you have all of these individual speakers, and with Dolby Atmos, you can address every single one of those individually, which hasn't been able ever before. And if one cinema has 50 loudspeakers and the other one has 40 and the next one has 37, it's always the same master file. Based on this object-based approach, it will always map to that configuration in the cinema. Obviously, this translates quite nicely into the home cinema. So in the beginning of Dolby Atmos, it was Hollywood movies and then the Blu-rays of those Hollywood movies. So it became like it started as a audiovisual format, but it has grown a lot from there, as we will see later. Yeah, so home cinema, basically people use like a configuration of like say 5.1 and then they put some speakers in their ceilings. Yeah, that works, but of course not many people do that. So other ways to hear Atmos, this is where it really started to gain traction in the consumer space. Is a concept called upfiring speakers. So we said, what's the biggest pain point for immersive music or immersive audio? The biggest pain point is drilling holes in your ceiling and mounting loudspeakers in your ceiling and getting cables up there. So that's a real nightmare. So the first innovation that we brought in or that we adopted was something called upfiring speakers. So you have loudspeakers that are firing to the ceiling, and you're creating reflections from the ceiling, firing back down. And this way, it actually works quite nicely. You can create an illusion of overhead without having to physically drill holes in your ceiling. Obviously, it works best when you have like a normal ceiling. So in here, it wouldn't work well. But in a normal living room, it works surprisingly good. And then at some point, people said, hey, let's take a concept called sound bars and let's add upfiring speakers into sound bars, and that's how we got into Dolby Atmos compatible sound bars. Now every company that builds sound bars has some of these in their portfolio. LG, Samsung, Sony, whoever. So this is a Sennheiser actually has a very nice one, the Sennheiser Ambeo. So you see, this is basically the soundbar here next to the TV, and it fires to the front, it fires to the ceiling. Many of them also fire to the sidewall. Some of them come with actual satellites you can put in the rear. Some of those satellites, again, also fire to the ceiling. So you already see, I just counted so many different loudspeaker configurations, and the fact that you can address all of these without any, you don't have to do one mix for each soundbar configuration. And that's really the power of object-based audio that is ticking in the background and making all of these things work very seamlessly for you as a mixing engineer, but also for the manufacturers of consumer equipment. You can have things like, for example, in Sonos, you can buy a Sonos soundbar and later buy two others, and then they will couple and form a bigger configuration. Depends how many additional loudspeakers you want to buy. Yeah, and another concept that actually works quite nicely is automotive. Cars, that's actually a big factor at the moment because cars are becoming more and more like computers. They're having so much DSP and technology in them by now. They have actually a lot of loudspeakers already. Even stereo cars have not just two speakers, but they have speakers in the rear half of the car anyways. So it's actually a small step to work with all car manufacturers and put some additional loudspeakers in the upper half of the car. And again, our flexibility really works. Some car brands have more speakers, others have fewer speakers. So we have very flexible systems. And we have actually a lot of car manufacturers started implementing Dolby Atmos. And it has a few very big advantages. So it's physical speakers. You don't rely on reflections. So that makes it very easy to control. You have a very controlled environment. You really know where the sweet spot is. You really know where your audience is sitting while listening. And people have a lot of time to listen to music and other audio content. So it's a very nice thing. And I think the future of immersive audio, you definitely have to think about cars. It's getting more and more important. And then, of course, we also have headphones. That's obviously another way to experience Dolby Atmos. So Dolby Atmos is not, as some might think, some kind of plugin that makes your headphones sound wider. That is completely wrong. The headphone is one part of this whole story that spins from the cinemas over the home cinemas, the smart speakers, the cars. And headphones is just one additional way to experience it, okay? And obviously headphones is by far the most affordable. You don't have to buy a new car. You don't have to sit in your living room. You just get your smartphone, put any headphones on, go to a music app, and you have Dolby Atmos. For example, Apple Music, they announced that like, I think 90% of their subscribers already heard immersive music because it's so, with Dolby Atmos, because it's so easy. That just basically means 90% of their users listened to music with headphones and stumbled across some Dolby Atmos content in their playlists, which is featured quite prominently. So it's very easy. So that's why a lot of people experience immersive audio right now this way. And it's great that it works. But of course, we should not forget about the other use cases. Yeah. The way that immersive audio works, it's based on a principle called binaural audio, you know. So it's basically psychoacoustics that is transforming the audio. So we try to trick your brain that you're thinking the sound is not coming from here, but more like from here and from here, all around your head. So it basically it's not exactly like a pinpoint there. It's more like you have this bubble of sound. It's a wider sound field. It can make listening easier because it's actually more natural than traditional pinning one speaker here and pinning one speaker here. Is actually it's not a very natural way of listening to it. You have just become used to it all your life. But when you think of it, having this like more like trying to reproduce a natural hearing is actually quite a nice way of experiencing audio. Yeah, so the good thing is about headphones, I don't have to tell you so much about it because everybody can just try for yourself how immersive audio works for you. Because literally everybody here has probably a device in your pocket that can play back Dolby Atmos. So in total, we have more than 2 billion devices now in the market. This is between obviously smartphones and PCs, soundbars, home cinema systems, cars. So we reached the mass market. And which is a good news for everybody who wants to do immersive audio and always had the problem that nobody can hear it. So we are now at a point where it's actually able to hear it. And that's also why people start using it. So that brings me to the next question, which is what content is actually available in Dolby Atmos? So that's probably the next big question. We will have a little Q&A in the end. I'm just rushing a little bit because we have our guest waiting in 15 minutes. So we will probably just do a Q&A after that, if you're fine with that. So next question is, what content is available in Dolby Atmos? So as I mentioned, it started in the audiovisual world. So in the beginning, it was mostly cinemas and then Blu-rays. But by now, it's actually mostly... Not many people buy Blu-rays anymore. So currently it's mostly audiovisual streaming services, AV streaming. I think there's been a question. Yeah. Did it? I mean, it started 2012. We came 2012 into the market. So it's 12 years now. And it's like growing constantly, like we're getting more and more devices and it's just growing year by year. But I have to admit, the first ever home cinema was 2014. So 2012 it started in the cinemas, and 2014 we went into the home. And I think 2015 we got Netflix, and that I think really... To 2014. So 10 years ago now. So 10 years ago. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So it's also Yeah, some of them. Yeah, that's true. I actually didn't even, I think it's somewhere here. I didn't push it so much. So it's actually, there are even TVs was built in Dolby ATMOS, which is kind of like a subset of the soundbars. Yeah. Can we take this to the Q&A section in the end, because we have our guest, which I wanted to call in, but we are very happy to answer that question afterward. So it's mostly AV streaming services. You can see it's pretty much all of the big services. So when, for example, when you work for Netflix and you do a Netflix original, it's pretty much no question almost that you are supposed to do this in Dolby ATMOS now. Same goes for the Disney Plus or the Apple TV Plus originals. So that's one thing. And as a result of this, there's Dolby ATMOS. We have about 12,000 pieces of content now that has been produced in Dolby ATMOS. So that's a lot of those streaming services, things, Netflix shows, plus Hollywood movies, but we're also growing in local content. But actually, that's the interesting thing. I think local television stations are usually the last ones to adopt it, because they still have to be like compatible with very old devices and all of these kind of things. So usually for people like streaming services, for everything that's transmitted digitally, it's so much easier to adopt the new technology. So that's why we pretty much 100% in all of these, but it takes much longer to get into broadcast. But we also have some stories to tell there. We are obviously, it's equally or probably at the moment even bigger is Dolby ATMOS for music. So we have a big partnership with Apple Music and the other several more international services. Like we have QQ Music, which is the biggest service in China. Melon is the biggest service in Korea. So it's really an international thing. It's not just Apple. Obviously, Amazon Music and Tidal are also supporting Dolby ATMOS, and we have just thousands and thousands of new releases every week. So we actually don't know the exact number because it's so big, but it's in the several hundred thousands of tracks that have been mixed and released in Dolby ATMOS. As an example, in the last Grammys, all the 8 album of the year and all the 8 single of the year and all the 8 artists of the year that were nominated, like 8 of 8 were Dolby ATMOS. So we had like 100% penetration of all the relevant Grammy nominees, which obviously, like every time, it starts at the top and then it tickles down into the more local areas, which is where we currently are. So in Germany, we have about 50% of the charts that are being produced in Dolby ATMOS. In UK, it's already more like 70, and it really depends on the size of the market. Also a little bit on the relevance of Apple Music in each market. But music is seeing a lot of traction at the moment. So I would say both for post-production works and for music works, it's a very interesting topic right now. Another example is live sport. So Dolby ATMOS is also used to transmit, and this is actually where we get a little bit into the broadcast world, right? So Dolby ATMOS is also used to transmit broadcast or to live transmit sports events. Let's put it this way. Could also be used for music shows. It hasn't been used so much. Sport is really the big driving factor here at the moment. So, for example, in the UK, we do Premier League every weekend, broadcasted in Dolby ATMOS to Sky and BT. And in Germany, we always broadcast the top game of the week in Dolby ATMOS. Like this goes for 2 years already. So the workflows exist and people transmit it. We also did, for example, the Olympic Games were broadcasted by France TV to like several million French households using Dolby ATMOS. And so there's definitely traction coming there. I think it's an interesting area. If you're in the broadcast field, we can definitely talk about this. So it just shows those workflows exist and it's not trials anymore. These are like commercial products that are running for years. And it works. but it's still not as much as compared to AV content or music. Let's put it this way. Yeah, but it's an interesting area. And obviously, immersive audio is fantastic for transmitting the atmosphere of a stadium, right? It's another of those things that are a very nice fit for immersive audio. Yeah, not many things that sound more impressive than a stadium with 60,000 people in it. Another little thing, not spending too much time here, Dolby Atmos is also available with podcasts, and a little bit what Apple Music has been for music and what Netflix has been for movies. Audible is for us when it comes to podcasts. So they are like our first big partner and a very big supporter of the format, and they do a lot of their big originals in Dolby Atmos, and obviously listening to a radio play, audio drama in Dolby Atmos. So it's grouped in the category of podcasts, but it's technically more like radio plays. Yeah, so it's with music and sound effects and actors. So the ones that you see there are very high quality produced. It's called scripted podcasts, so it's like a radio play. It's like a Netflix show without picture. It really sounds very impressive, and obviously that's a very nice fit for immersive audio. So I have one more chapter, which you're probably interested in now, hopefully. How can you create Dolby Atmos? What we will do is, because we are running a little bit behind of time, I will introduce you to our guest first. We talk a bit with him, hear a little bit his perspective of running a Dolby Atmos studio. And then we dive back, and I go back to my last few slides to give you a little bit like hands-on tips and tricks if you want to start doing Dolby Atmos yourself. And spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure everybody of you could already do it this evening if you want, but we get to that. Let me show you a little video. Let's see how we get that to work. And slideshow, show video. All right, my calendar. Oh my God. All right, so that was fun. Yeah, Stefan is a very nice guy. I was actually there tuning that room back then, I think, 2.5 years ago. Yeah, it's very nice actually over there in Sweden. They actually have quite a few Atmos rooms already, so the industry has picked up there a bit more. There have also been like some other tracks already mixed and released in Atmos. So let's get into the last chapter. So it's just a handful of slides and about maybe 10 more minutes, and then we can go to lunch. So if you want to start doing it yourself, so there are actually a few important points. So I wrote them down because this is pretty much in a nutshell what you need. So first off, we are by now in a point where it just works with any DAW. So it's not really anymore that much of a workflow discussion. We also heard it a little bit with Stefan. He tried different workflows, same as with stereo. You kind of have to find what works for you. You kind of have to work with the audio workstation that you are quickest. The best audio workstation is always the one that you know the best. And we are by now we have quite a few Dolby Atmos workflows established that all function quite nicely. So you can kind of say the software workflow question is a little bit solved. I will give you some QR codes in the end where you can check some tutorials and guidances. And there's, for example, a video getting started with Dolby Atmos in Logic Pro. And that's like an 8-minute video. So it's really, really straightforward by now. And it's mostly learning how to use it properly. Same as with Stefan. And same as when you work in stereo, finding your workflows, getting really good at something. But getting started is quite doable by now. But there is the big question about headphones versus loudspeakers. And this is kind of what I end up on. So you can mix Dolby Atmos on headphones because literally all of these solutions are supporting a headphone output. And I mentioned Dolby Atmos can be rendered binaurally on headphones, and this is not just true on your smartphone, but also in your audio workstation. So every audio workstation that supports Dolby Atmos includes a binaural headphone bus, so to say. And you can monitor all the time on headphones, print the track, deliver it, and never tell anybody that you only worked on headphones. You can technically do that, and there are people that do that. However, we do not recommend it because the loudspeaker use case is quite important as well, especially with the increase in cars. And car is quite close to recording studio when it comes to the level of details. You can really pinpoint where something is coming from because the car is such a controlled environment. And we don't want people to mix only on headphones, and 2 years down the road, your artist will buy a new Mercedes and suddenly hear the mix you did in a car and suddenly say, what did you do there? And there are certain things that people quite often get wrong when they only mix on headphones. There are certain things I can tell when I can kind of tell when a mix was done on headphones only, because you tend to do way too much in the sides, because the sides sound quite nice on headphones. But when you then play it back in the studio, you suddenly say, where's my front? I have nobody standing in front of me anymore. And these kind of things, and these kind of in-between positions that everything is a little bit muddy, that happens quite quickly if you don't have a lot of experience. So people that mixed a lot on speakers and on headphones, they can probably create a perfect mix on headphones because they have that experience now. And I have some people doing that, like they're traveling and they have to make mix adjustments in the hotel room and they just do it. And because they know so well the translation. But especially if you're starting out, you need to have that experience of monitoring on loudspeakers a lot. Yeah. And comparing what happens on speakers, what happens on headphones, because ultimately your mix has to work on both, right? Dolby Atmos is being played back on speakers and on headphones. So you have to kind of work on both. So that's why I kind of say you can, of course, go ahead, prepare a lot, all the routing, all the session setup, a lot of your level decisions you can already do on headphones, but you have to at some point go to a studio, or of course, you simply need a few loudspeakers and then you have a Dolby Atmos studio on your own, because that's really what it takes. Because as I said, the whole software topic is not really that much of an issue anymore, and you don't have to pay us any kind of license fees or whatever. There's also that rumor. No, you don't have to pay us anything. You buy like a piece of software and you buy some loudspeakers, and you probably need a new audio interface. That's actually why the Anubis is actually a very interesting one that we literally see in a lot of studios. But that's it basically. So this is really the way into Dolby Atmos. So that's why I said everybody can simply plug in your headphones in your MacBook tonight and start experimenting with it. So, but of course, please at some point go and listen on speakers. So one option to do it is a software from Dolby. It's called the Dolby Atmos Renderer. It costs about $300, so it's like a plugin basically. This has been the traditional workflow. You also saw that software in the background in Stefan's studio. It basically enables you to control. Here you see actually the objects in the room. You see your levels. You can switch between different monitor formats, between headphones and loudspeakers and all kinds of things. So that's one way to do Dolby Atmos. So you have your software and you buy this €300 software to go along. But actually less and less people buy that software because Dolby Atmos becomes more and more integrated. So for example, if you have Pro Tools or Logic or Cubase Nuendo or Presonus Studio One, it's fully integrated with Dolby Atmos. And I guess Merging Pyramix will probably also come, but I don't know that yet, but I guess it will. So this is like 100% integration in these workstations, where you literally don't need our own renderer anymore because it's completely built in. It's like a window inside Pro Tools. So that's one way to do. That means if you have Logic, you don't even need our software. You simply need Logic Pro and your speakers. And there's one other funny solution from a company. I'm just mentioning it here because it's important for the whole picture. It's a company called Fiedler Audio from Germany. They have a tool called Dolby Atmos Composer, which is a plugin that basically enables Dolby Atmos in any audio workstations, even in those ones that don't offer a native workflow. They basically bypass the original audio engine of the software, and you basically send your audio from the tracks directly into the master channel where you have this plugin sitting. It's quite a funny workflow, but it works quite nice. I mean, same as with every workflow, you have to learn it, and then it will work for your projects. This is just another option. And for example, people that used Fruity Loop Studios on Windows, that didn't work with the Dolby Atmos renderer back then. So for these people, it's good that we have that now. So again, they have a ton of tutorials. Their software, the basic version is free. You can just try it, and it's one other option in the palette now. So that's it about software. You will probably need some kind of audio interface. Again, the Anubis is a nice one. There are a lot of audio interfaces now that support enough outputs for Dolby Atmos. And then obviously, if you want to go that route and design a studio, we have actually a lot of resources. So we have some documents, we have some tools to help you. It's also not rocket science. So in a nutshell, this is basically what you're looking at. You will have 3 loudspeakers in the front, left, center, right. You will have a pair of side surrounds, a pair of rear surrounds, and typically 4 loudspeakers in the ceiling. This is what we call, and a subwoofer, not drawn here. That's what we call 7.1.4. I guess almost everybody here has heard that term before. That's very common. As I mentioned earlier, Atmos is very flexible about speaker configurations. This also applies to studios. So there are some studios that add another side surround in here, or we call them wide speakers. So suddenly you have a 914. Some of them add another overhead, so then you have a 916. All of that works, and you can go between a 916 room and a 714 room without changing your project or anything. That's the cool thing about the object-based workflow. It will just render to that different speaker count. You don't have to change any routing. You just go in the renderer window and tell them, hey, today I'm in a 916 room, and tomorrow I'm in a 714 room, and on the way home I'm monitoring on headphones. You just switch the output format, and you don't have to switch your routing. Something to get used to, but it's actually super powerful once you realize that. I'm not sure how many of you are working in Pro Tools, but I always get anxiety when I have to change something in the I/O setup in Pro Tools. And that's so nice that you don't have to do that anymore. The I/O setup can stay the same, and you just change your output size basically in your Dolby Atmos renderer. So this is a little document. You can scan that, or I can give it to you later as well. That's basically a webinar where I actually explain step by step. It's another hour, so you don't have to listen to me now for an hour. Instead, you just watch that. And I explain how to set up a room, where to put the speakers, and it contains the links to all of these tools to really give you like an idea what it takes to build Dolby Atmos in your studio. And we have by now more than 800 studios between music and post just in Europe. So not counting Asia and America. So many people already did that. Here is a QR code that is like a list of the music studios we have. We currently don't have a list for post-production studios, which is a pity. I think we should have that, but we don't at the moment. So this list contains all the music studios, and we have like a similar number of post-production focused facilities across Europe, especially in the big hubs like London, Paris, Berlin. There's so many Dolby Atmos enabled. Like all the post facilities that work for Netflix or Disney, they just need those rooms, obviously, and usually not just one of them. So I mean that's just good for us. I mean that just has kind of become a standard there. Some more information. Actually, we can download our software for free for 3 months. You can do that on this link, or you just go to professional.dolby.com/music. And the last link of the day is something called learning.dolby.com, another very easy link to remember. It's completely free. It's like some schools would charge a lot of money for it. It's a complete course, online course you can do, including tests and rehearsals, and you can download a session to do certain exercises and all of these kind of things. And we offer it completely for free. It's just an online course on the basics of mixing Dolby ATMOS. Yeah, so that's it from my side. All right.
Sziasztok! Én Horváth Attila vagyok, nagyjából egy ilyen másfél éve csöppentem ebbe a immerzív audio, meg Dolby ATMOS világba. Először így nagyjából arról, hogy én nekem mi a workflow, meg hogyan áll össze egy ilyen session, azt mondanám el. De ezt hogy lehet egy sessionben megcsinálni a sztereót és az ATMOS-t. Nekem még nem állt rá úgy a kezem, meg a workflow, hogy ez megtörténjen egy sessionben, és igazából szerintem nem is feltétlen baj, mert a stereo mixnél még annyi minden mással kell foglalkozni, hogyha még ott az ember már elkezdi a térben mozgatni a dolgokat, akkor lehet, hogy itt inkább arról megy el a fókusz, ami a sztereóban a lényeg. Először megcsináltam a stereo verziót, a stereo mastert. Itt nagyon fontos, amikor ezt átültetjük utána ATMOS-ba, hogy a lehető legpontosabban, nagyon körültekintően legyenek ezek a stemek legyártva. Ez azt jelenti, hogy figyelni kell, hogy azok az automatikák benne legyenek, a hangerők, ha van esetleg ilyen sidechain vezérel dolgok, akkor az hogy fog utána rá égetődni a sávra. Mert végül is, amikor elkezdődik ez az ATMOS mix, én azt szoktam csinálni, hogy behívom a master file-t, behívom a stemeket, és hangerőbe ezt összelövöm a kettőt, visszahúzom egy 8-10 dB-vel a mastert, és utána AB-ba meghallgatom, és hogyha ugyanazt hallom, mint a mixem, igazából pontosabban mondva, igen, a mixel érdemes összehasonlítani, nem is a masterral, akkor jó úton jár az ember, akkor jól sikerültek ezeket a stemeket kiírni, és nincsenek mondjuk nagyobb ilyen aránybeli és bármilyen különbségek, amit észrevenni az ember.
Azt kérdezném meg, hogy a stemeket, azokat hogy írod? Tehát, hogy mikből csinálsz stemet, vagy hogy szoktad ezeket?
Minél jobban szétbontja az ember, igazából mindent érdemes ráégetni, amit a keverésnél csináltál, minden processzt.
Tehát a stemek alatt te konkrét sávokat, vagy grupokat, vagy hogy érted?
Én stemek alatt amúgy, igen, tehát nem hangszercsoportokat értek, hanem végül is sávokat értek, csak annyi különbséggel, hogy itt már rajta van az összes processz, ami a keveréskor rákerült.
Mínusz zengetés,
azt is mondanám, a zengetést azt úgy érdemes, hogy én úgy szoktam csinálni, hogy drive-et, és akkor van egy teljesen száraz elem, és van egy csak zengetésem.
Tehát akkor csinálsz egy olyan stemet, amire ráégeted az engetést?
Nem, csak az engetés külön van.
Csak az engetést külön.
Csak az engetés
hozzá tudja keverni.
És csak a szárazat külön. És ez effektezésnél amúgy igaz az összes többire is. Tehát, hogyha delay, reverb van mondjuk egy gitáron, akkor azt is szétszedem, teljesen száraz, csak delay, csak reverb. És így van a legnagyobb játéktér utána, hogy ezt hogy és miként helyezi el az ember. A stemek elkészültek, bekerültek a sessionbe, akkor ez az első, végül is ez az első dolog, hogy a mixel összehallgatva, akkor eldöntjük, hogy jó, akkor ez jól sikerült ez a stem export, nincsenek akkora eltérések, vagy így igazából az a legjobb, hogyha teljesen ugyanaz. A következő lépés nálam az, hogy megpróbálom a mastert rekonstruálni, csak itt az ATMOS mixnél nincsen stereo mixbuszunk, meg masterbuszunk, mert ezek mindegyik egy különálló objektként mozog a térbe. Viszont én azt szeretném, hogy ugyanaz a processz, vagy hát nagyjából ugyanaz a processz rákerüljön, mint nekünk a végén a mixbuszunkra rákerült. És ezt végül is úgy oldottam meg, hogy behívom a sessionbe a mixet is, ami egy mix sidechain buszon elküldök egy buszba, és az összes channelre, amik innen mennek fölfelé, ugyanazokat a plugineket rakom rá ugyanabban a sorrendbe. Ami most jelen esetben csak egy EQ és egy limiter, ez azért is van, mert
ezzel a kettővel oldottam meg, és ezek össze vannak linkelve. Tehát magyarul, ha bármelyik paramétert állítom az egyiken, akkor az összesre vonatkozik. És utána ugyanez van a limiteren is. És itt az a lényege, hogy a mix vezérli, tehát hogy másképp reagál ez a limiter, igazából úgy reagál, mint a mix buszon reagált, mert ugyanaz a mix vezérli. Tehát azt az eredményt adja, mint hogyha ezeknek a csatornáknak az összegzetjelét küldené bele az ember. Tehát magyarul máshogy dolgozik, mint hogyha csak úgy külön lenne rajta. És akkor így gyakorlatilag ebbe az első fázisba a mastert ezzel a logikával megpróbálom rekonstruálni, és akkor utána pedig elkezdődik az, hogy ez a térbe szétdobálom a dolgokat, és akkor mit hova helyezzek el.
Az a processzor teljesítmény miatt van, hogy az eredeti projektből nem tudsz kiindulni, tehát hogy ne kelljen a plugineket újra használni. Tehát gyakorlatilag, hogy a nyerssávokból a pluginekkel együtt dolgozni a ATMOS keverésből, vagy túl sok lenne már?
Igen, mert tehát ugye egyrészt, hogyha belegondolsz, hogy mennyi plugin van általában mondjuk egy session-ödbe, és akkor ott még mindegyikre rárakod egyesével ezeket a master láncokat. Igen. Tehát azért már nekem a mix mastereim végén ott már azért a CPU már azért egy kicsit, vagy hát meglehetősen nagy használatban van. Szóval ezt nem nagyon tudná elvinni úgy, hogy még a mastert is ilyen módon megpróbálom csatornánként rekonstruálni rajta. A következő lépés az, hogy legyártok ilyen sztereobuszokat, itt az alján szerepelnek itt a sessionombe, és ezek el vannak nevezve front, center, side, rear, high front, high rear. Tehát ezek gyakorlatilag a hangfal kiosztások, és ezek egy-egy objectbe mennek, amik oda vannak panorámázva, ahol valójában ezek a hangfalak vannak. Ez végül is, ez olyan, mint a bed, csak ezek ilyen object vezérelt bed. Annyi a különbség, hogy ez látszik, amikor egy play-t nyomok, és ugye, hogyha bedbe küldi az ember, az ezen a ábrán nem látszódnak ezek a pöttyök. Én pedig szeretem, hogyha minden hangnak megvan a pozíciója, és mindegyik hang látszik. És ezekbe a csatornákba akkor így elküldöm végül is azokat a stemeket, amiket szeretnék, hogy ott szóljon. Itt van például lábdob, az a frontba megy. Ha valamit esetleg nem szeretnék odaragasztani így a falra, egy hangfalra, akkor azokat nem buszba küldöm, hanem azokat objectbe küldöm, és akkor azoknak külön megvan a pozíciója. Ez például egy lábdob szengető. Itt egy szekvenszerrel bármilyen alakzatot be lehet írni, és utána azt tempóra ő járja körbe azt az alakzatot, amit az ember megad neki. Annyi, hogy itt ennél a Pro Tools és renderer típusnál még amikor a rendererbe kiírtam az ATMOS fájlt, ez nem került bele a végső master fájlba az a mozgás, amit ez a panner csinál. Úgyhogy ezt bele kellett kopizni végül is, erre is van egy megfelelő funkció. A Pro Tools-nak a pannerébe. Ez a panner mozgatja már, de abba írtam meg a mozgást, és utána erre az XY tengelyre végül is felvettem ezt a mozgást, és akkor itt látszik, hogy ő ezt miként mozgatja a térbe. Ugyanez igaz az összes többi mozgásra.
Ezt egyébként egérrel, vagy ezt hogy csinálod? Vagy van valami kontrollered erre?
Nem, ezt pont a Dolby ATMOS Music pannerrel.
Ja, a pannerrel, igen, azt
tehát abba a szekvenszerben.
És azt lekopizza a görbére.
Igen, és akkor ezt touchba rakja az ember, lejátsza, és akkor fölveszi azt a mozgást. A többi mozgást, amikor így hátulról előre mennek dolgok, vagy magasságot, azt szintén ezzel, hogy itt ebbe a touch funkcióba van, és akkor a pannerba, amit mozgat az ember, azt fölveszi. Mondjuk én ezt utólag beszoktam írni ütem 1-től ütem 1-ig, hogy legyen, milyen görbe legyen. De az első mozdulatokat, azokat akkor egérrel rakom be.
Erről értekezett egy rövidet, hogy hogy az éneket centerbe teszi el, vagy fantom középirányba, de úgy hallottam, hogy te is fantom középirányba.
Igen.
Tudatosan használod a centert effektnek gyakorlatilag.
Igen, bizonyos részeknél, tehát ilyen állandóban nincs, de ez sem ilyen szabályszerű, tehát hogy mindig ahogy haladok és újabbakat csinálok, én is próbálok ki más dolgokat. Az elején csak ilyen effekt jelleggel használtam a centert, amikor egy sorbemondás vagy egy C-rész. És akkor ott az AVS volt az utolsó lemez, amit csináltam, ott már raktam be lábdopergő bészt, meg egy-két dolgot. Úgyhogy én is még igazából tapasztalom ki. Ennek igazából ott van, mert az, hogy egy ilyen térben jól szóljon, azt úgy viszonylag könnyű megcsinálni, csak hogy ezután hogyan a binaurál verzióban hogyan fog konvertálódni, vagy ott mi történik, az egy másik kérdés. És az első lemez az a Jude Law-nak a Kintsugi lemeze volt, amit csináltam, és ott még nem nagyon foglalkoztam ezzel a binaurál verzióval, tehát ott örültem, hogy kész vagyok, amikorra kellett. És utána pedig azt vettem észre, hogy egyre többet veszem fel a fülest, és az utolsó lemeznél már kb. Ugyanannyit volt rajtam a füles, mint amikor a hangfalakat hallgattam, mert nyilván azért, mert a hallgatók többsége abba fogja hallgatni, meg azt is ott meg kellett tanulni, hogy mi mit csinál. És amúgy, hogyha egy fehér zajjal az ember elkezdi maga körül mozgatni ezt vagy csak előre hátra vinni, akkor nagyon élesen hallatszódik a különbség. Tehát, hogy igazából a fülkagyló milyen szűrő hatást csinál egy ilyen széles spektrumú hangnál, hogyha elkezdett mozgatni, akkor nagyon hallatszik. És akkor nyilván ezek rákerülnek azokra a dolgok, amik oldal vagy hátra panorámázza az ember, és ugye ez nem biztos, hogy minden esetben hasznos. És amit ott a térben nem hallasz meg, hogyha azt direktbe fülesbe hallod, az EQ görbe, amit rárakott éppen az, hogy te fölemelted ma magasságát, az nem biztos, hogy éppen hasznos. Úgyhogy ez folyamatos csekkolás. Megnyitok még egy másik sessiont, ez egy AVS-es dal lesz. Itt már azzal kezdtem el egy kicsit többet foglalkozni, hogy ezeket a rúgmokat, meg a tereket hogyan csináljam meg. Mert ugye ahogy ezt a binaurál verzióban 3 verzió közül tudsz választani, vagyis 4, vagy off, mint kikapcsolod, akkor nem csinál semmit. És akkor van near, mid, meg far beállítás. Ezt úgy kell képzelni, mint hogyha egy szobába a hangforrás hozzád közel van, közepesen távol, vagy távol van. Tehát ez a binaurál verzió az végülis azt próbálja meg leképezni, mint hogyha te egy valós szobába a hangfalakon hallgatnád ezt a dolgot. Tehát, hogy ahogy ezt bekapcsolod, az mindenképpen egy plusz zengetőt ad hozzá. Ha azt akarod, hogy semmilyen plusz processz ne kerüljön rá, akkor ezt offra kell rakni. És hogyha már használsz bármilyen zengetőt a sessionon belül, akkor azért érdemes kalkulálni, hogy ezek össze fognak adódni. Tehát, hogy könnyen, én azt vettem észre, hogy sok esetben elég zengős, rúmos ezek a spatial audióba, tehát hogyha fülesbe hallgatja az ember ezeket az ATMOS mixeket.
De ez a lejátszó szoftver adja hozzá.
Ez egy beállítás, mindjárt megmutatom. Tehát, hogy van egy binaurál, ez egy plugin, olyan, hogy rá tudod.
Ja, de hogy magában ez a binaural, te nem a usernek a lejátszó szoftver.
Nem, igen. Ez itt kerül rá, ahogy az ember beállítja ezt a near, mid, fart. És ahogy haladtam a keveréssel, ugye egyre többet használtam a fülest, meg próbáltam erre nagyobb figyelmet szentelni ennek. És itt akkor egy picit ezáltal így a template-em is átalakult, és csak annyit csináltam, hogy ilyen előre dedikált binaurál beállítások is bekerültek ezekbe a buszokba. Tehát van near, a sima near, azon nincs binaurál semmi, az az off. Van near közeli, távoli, vagyis hogy közepes, meg távoli. Ez mindegyik egy külön busz, és akkor ez végül is meggyorsítja a dolgot, mert ha azt akarom, hogy jó, ez oldal szóljon, de mondjuk ne legyen rajta semmi zengető, akkor a sima side-ba küldöm. Hogyha oldalt szóljon, de legyen egy kicsit távolabbi érzés mögé rakni, akkor ez ugyanúgy csak egy másik buszra küldöm is. És akkor így felgyorsult végül is ez a folyamat. Meg ugye az, hogy minden egyes objektnél lefölvenni a fülest, az is azért egy kicsit macerás. Meg még itt amúgy az Inspiráltának használtam a zengetőjét, ami ATMOS kompatibilis, és 2 presetet is. Az egyik az, amit ott mértek be a Super Size-ba, azóta már Pro Vibe stúdióba. Ott a Live Room-ot megcsinálták, és én meg azt próbáltam megcsinálni, hogy beültetem a zenekart a szobában, és meg középen ülök. Ott azt is meg tudod adni, hogy te egy bizonyos térben te hol hallgatod, és hogy hol van a hangforrás. Mert rengeteg mérést csináltak, a pozíciót is, meg a hangfalat is. 2 napig mértek egy szobát. Úgyhogy nagyon sok adat van, meg nagyon sok lehetőség, de ott ez volt nekem a koncepcióm, hogy úgy raktam le ezeket a hangforrásokat magam köré, mint hogyha körülöttem ülne a zenekar, de közben meg nem minden van beleküldve ebbe a zengetőbe. Pont ezért, amit az előbb mondtam. Illetve még az egy érdekesség, hogyha ezt a mozgást az ember szeretné szemléltetni a fülesbe, akkor ha azt off-ra rakja az ember a binaural settingbe, akkor ez nem történik meg. Tehát akkor nem történik meg az a szoba plusz zengetés, és azáltal az EQ változás, amit a mozgás meg a fülkagylónk csinál. Úgyhogy ha azt szeretnénk, hogy az érvényesüljön, akkor azt mindenképp vagy mid, vagy near, vagy far funkcióba kell állítani. Az ATMOS-ban egy teljesen másik teret építeni a dal köré, tehát hogy megpróbálom azt, amit a sztereóban használtam, vagy használta az ember, aki lekeverte, ugyanazokat használni, csak ugye nyilván nem feltétlenül úgy, hogy ugyanonnan szól. Úgyhogy ezeket mindig ilyen drive-et beírom ki. Mondjuk ennél a sessionnél csináltam olyat, hogy külön zengetőt csináltam hozzá. Amúgy ez az a plugin, és itt van benne ez a Live Room, és akkor itt a hangforrásokat le lehet rakni a szobába, hogy melyik honnan szól, és te pedig tudod mozgatni, hogy ezt te honnan hallgatod.
Ja, olyan mixed nincs, ami ATMOS-ban van downmixelve? Binaurálisban? Ebből?
De csak a binaurál verziót az fülesbe érdemes.
Ja, igen.
Hangfalon
jó.
Nem jön ki az a hatás.
Ja. Köszönjük szépen.
Köszönjük.